Seeing Christ in movies.
Sounds like some pretty epic music, RC.
It does, Bridget. It's because it is.
It is.
Dude, even hearing that, it makes me think of that. Hey, welcome back to the Saints, to the Saints. We have been putting it off for a while. We've been teasing it for a couple of weeks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But it's time, today, right now, to see Christ in the movie
Kon-Tiki.
Kon-Tiki. My name is RC.
This is Tyrone.
This is Andrew.
This is Carrie.
And this is Bridget.
Yes, this music that we are listening to is from the movie Kon-Tiki. Now, we should probably specify it's from the 2013 movie
Yes.
Kon-Tiki. There was an Academy Award-winning documentary done back in the day called Kon-Tiki. This movie is actually kind of based on that documentary.
It is definitely based on that documentary.
Yes.
Or it could kind of definitely be. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, it's based on the expedition.
Yes.
The documentary was based on the expedition, and
Sure.
the movie was based on the documentary. That was based on.
If that's not confusing enough.
Right. So basically, to say,
This a movie.
there was an explorer, a gentleman named Thor, hired the Hall.
Yes.
Now, I actually like saying his name, hired the Hall. I don't know if that's how you say it, but anyway. Thor, is from
Sweden.
Norway.
He's from Norway.
He's Norwegian.
I'm sure that just offended a lot of Swedish people. Very sorry.
We're very sorry.
Yes. Legendary Thor hired the Hall's epic 4,300 mile. That's a lot of miles.
Yes.
Crossing of the Pacific Ocean on a balsa wood raft back in 1947.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
You're thinking, oh, did they have the technology to do it? Well, he didn't even use the modern technology they had available to them at the time. Because he was trying to prove that it was possible for South Americans to have settled Polynesia in pre-Columbian times.
Yes.
Peruvians.
So they wouldn't have even had the technology that they had back in 1947.
Right.
They float on a balsa wood raft.
Yes.
In the Pacific Ocean.
So this idea came because he and his wife were visiting the Polynesians.
Mm-hmm.
He was studying, I don't remember exactly what, but he was studying something down there.
Culture or something like that. Yeah.
And one of the elders in the tribe that they were with basically told him a different story from what he had. Yes, from what he had learned in his education. Mm-hmm. That basically Polynesia had been discovered and populated from the west, basically from the Asian countries, right? I don't remember which one exactly, but basically the people who populated Polynesia had come from the west.
From Asia, yeah.
And this elder was, when he asked this elder about, the history of their tribe, he talked about their forefathers coming from the east.
Yes.
Not the west. Which got Thor to thinking, like,
how's that even possible?
Right. We've been told that it just could not happen.
How could you say they came from the east when everybody else says they came from the west?
So then Thor sets out to prove the elders' story.
Yes.
Essentially.
Yeah.
Right. Could this really be done?
Yeah, the elder told them how this was through oral tradition that he learned how his tribe or his people came from Peru, and they used a balsa wood raft, and they just sailed on this raft across the Pacific Ocean and populated the Polynesian islands.
Yes, Easter Island being one of those.
Yes.
And so part of Thor's, I'm waving my hands around my head, part of his theory was that, the statues that are known around the the Easter Island, and he says are more in line with the other people, the ones from the East.
Tiki.
In pre-Columbian times.
Yeah.
Then
Peruvians.
Yes, the South Americans, than it is for the other ones. Everybody thinks, oh, they're part of XYZ.
Yeah.
And so, also to say, I want to shout out to Brother David, who got online and reached out to us saying, hey, here's a movie I really like and see a lot of Christ in. Can you guys see Christ in this movie? And so the 6 of us, sat down one night and watched it together, and it's rated PG-13, so it's a little. There's some. It's an adventure. There are some epic adventure moments that can be kind of tense, and my wife is not one for tensity, and so she, while she enjoyed the movie, there were parts she did not enjoy, and so to know that, and if you haven't seen it. Today is going to be a major spoiler alert.
Spoiler.
Yeah, I mean, the truth is you probably haven't. This is not a super well-known movie. You can watch it on Amazon. That's where we rushed it from. But yeah, we're about to totally spoil it for you. So if you really hate spoilers, you might go
watch it first
and then come back and listen.
If you're listening online, push pause. Or what could be fun is like live watch it with us. You know, while we're talking about it, you can be watching it.
And just pausing 2 things in the show.
Yeah.
Because that's not confusing. Right.
All right. So basically,
okay. Thor.
Yeah, he sets out to actually do what the forefathers essentially did.
Right. What these? Yeah.
Yeah.
What he needs funding to do this.
Yes,
he does. Okay, so I'm sorry. So one thing to remember about Thor, why this expedition is also kind of a big thing for him, floating on a raft in the Pacific Ocean, is he's deathly afraid of water. He can't swim.
Yeah, he cannot swim.
The movie opens with a scene of him falling in through some ice and getting pulled out because he has this adventurous spirit As a kid, he has this risk-taking spirit.
Yes, he does.
And they're telling him, "Oh, promise me you'll never do anything like that again." You can just see it in his eyes. He's not going to promise that.
Nope.
Well, he's sitting there sick in bed from having fallen in this freezing cold water. And you just see his jaw clench and his lips are pressed together. And there's no way that promise is coming out of his mouth.
And so he has this spirit in him, this spirit of adventure, if you will. And so, to float on a raft in the Pacific Ocean is kind of a big deal for him who can't swim. And like Andrew said, he needs funding, Andrew.
So he tries to get funding for this expedition. So he, naturally goes to the Norwegians because those are his people. And wouldn't they want Norwegian explorers to, debunk this myth and be conquerors?
Yeah, right.
Well, they're not so interested in that. He's even going to the United States. He's trying to find people that would fund it. So he goes to National Geographic.
Yep.
Wouldn't this be great? We'll document this, and you can put this in your magazine. Yep. The National Geographic just kind of isn't interested in it.
No, everyone's like, we already know how this works. They were populated from the West. There's really no story here.
Yeah. So he's coming up against a strong mindset. We've done this before. We've got this. We know this.
We know this.
There's no reason for us to fund something that we already know.
It's already established.
Right. I mean, even National Geographic said, stories about Norwegians dying at sea would sell magazines, but not this one.
Well, that was another thing, is that no one thought it possible.
That's true.
Yeah.
They all thought it was a ridiculous idea. But
Pacific rafting trip.
Right. But we know that people from South America did not populate the Polynesian Islands because it's not possible.
Right.
Yeah.
Because then he was trying to recruit people. And he goes to experienced
sailors,
and they're explaining to him, physically, this raft isn't going to be able to sustain this type of a journey.
Right.
Yep.
They explain basically all the ways it won't work.
Yeah.
Yes.
People who have experience being on the sea. This isn't going to work.
Yep.
You can't do it.
But he's determined.
He is determined. He has this faith.
Yeah.
He has this vision.
This vision, yes.
Yep.
You said he's a person who likes to take risk, or I would say he's a person who wants to go beyond himself.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
And so one of the things that I found interesting was when he was trying to get the resources to basically pay for this expedition from the Americans or National Geographic or the Norwegians, he says, they ask him, so what are you going to do? Like when you're out there? And he says, we're going to surrender to the ocean and to the wind.
Ooh.
And I like that because I thought of what we've been talking about, church or body life in Christ, which is surrendering to the ocean. The ocean is salt water. For us, it represents death or dying. We're gonna lay down our lives, and then also we're gonna surrender to the wind. That is, we're gonna submit to the Spirit of God.
Yes.
So we'll lay down our lives and we'll live by Christ's life. And I was reminded of that, and I thought that was paramount because that's like the entire voyage or expedition. There's lots of experiences, but that's it. They've surrendered. There's nowhere to go once they get on the raft. It's just, here's the wind and here's the sea.
Which is what we do, like you said, in body life with the Lord, in the church, who is Christ.
Yes.
We surrender to death and the life, the Spirit.
Unto life, yes.
Well, and just so that people don't think we're just meaning ocean as death because it's highly likely they'll die out there. But it's because in Scripture, salt water represented death.
Yes.
Yeah.
The oceans actually represented death in Scripture. So that's where we're pulling that from.
So how does he finally get funding, Andrew?
Well, I mean, just when he comes, he's frustrated. And even he talks to his wife on the phone, and she's like, this isn't going to happen. It's okay. Just come back. And he is determined.
Yes.
This is going to happen. And he goes to the Peruvians.
Oh, yeah.
The people who were the ones who were the sailors. And they were very interested in his story.
He said, I can prove that Peruvians were the ones that populated the Polynesian islands. Oh, what do you need?
I know. They were on board with helping.
Yeah.
Yeah.
His vision, they aligned more with his vision than the other people did.
Yes.
And so they're the ones.
Well, they were the ones that stood to gain. And that's the thing, when we're ready to pursue the Lord's eternal purpose, and we come up to the reality that it's actually costly for us so that the Lord can gain. The people who want the gain for themselves,
the leaders,
will resist.
They will.
Or refuse. But we know that the one who stands to gain, God, Christ, when we go to Him for the resources, he's all sufficient and has all the resources, but
Because he already did it.
And see, there you go with the Peruvians.
Yes.
They not obviously not those specific people.
These are pictures.
That people had already done it.
Yeah.
And
so he went to the people.
We're only proving
land.
that he had already done it.
Yes.
Yeah.
That they were the ones originally who did it.
So he's saying, let me show you. Let me show the world that you did this.
Yes.
Let's walk out what's already been done.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yep.
Let's manifest what has been done already.
Yeah.
So they have to begin somewhere. They got to begin with a raft. And so like we've talked about, he's gone to recruit sailors and people, and hey, I got to build this raft, and here's this plan that I have. And one particular scene, he's in a bar talking to one of the sailors, and, and the sailor's telling him every which way that he can die out there from this. But listening to this conversation is somebody who actually has maybe a little understanding and skill of what to do with this raft.
How to build it.
An engineer.
But he has no sailing experience.
No sailing experience, but he knows how he can make that raft work.
Yes.
Yes.
So, old Thor's drawing out on the napkin for the sailor, showing him, hey, here it is. And so the sailor basically takes the napkin, crumples it up, and throws it, to the table or on the floor or somewhere. So he leaves, and Thor, dejected, gets up to leave. But this engineer comes over, picks up the napkin, and chases after Thor, saying, hey, let me show you how this can work. Herman's his name. Thank you, yes. So Herman draws this little extra piece underneath, says you need this. And if you do that, you can cut through waves and do this with that.
So what's interesting about Herman is
the engineer.
The engineer, yes, thank you. Is that he is offering himself for this expedition, and he's offering his own resources.
Yes. His expertise.
Yes, his natural abilities, his knowledge, and what he can bring to the table. Thor takes him up on it.
Yeah.
Totally. He's like, great, come join this adventure. And then it's also a lot of Thor's fellow countrymen who served with him in the war.
Yep.
World War II, right? Is this World War II?
Yes,
yeah, who served with him in World War II. Yeah. Join as well. And then what was the camera guy? What was he? What nation was he from?
I don't remember, but
was he Australian or New Zealand?
He may have been.
He was not Norwegian. Oh, he was the Swedish one.
They were all from they were all from Norway, except for
the engineer,
Bengt Danielsson, who was the Swede.
Okay.
There's one Swede.
Oh, so even Herman was from Norway as well. Okay.
Oh, nice.
So there you go.
There's 6 people altogether.
Okay, I was just about to ask, how many were there total?
6
of
people,
them.
6 guys.
Right, and they all kind of had their purpose on the crew. Like typical.
Their function.
Their function. Yeah.
That all these men were recruited by Thor, the one man. He recruits his posse, his people.
We definitely see Thor as kind of the Christ figure.
Yes.
In this story.
Well, they're building this this balsa wood raft, and none of them are experienced like rafters. They don't. They didn't train in rafting through the ocean. So they're building something essentially. I felt like that none of them had really experienced. And I saw so many images of like Noah building the ark.
True.
Or, in the Old Testament, they had all the specifications for how the temple was to be built.
Yes.
And these things that had there's a heavenly vision, and it was laid towards them, but them in themselves didn't really know how everything was to fit together and work. They knew that, the wood was going to float on the water. But other than that, just how to put this together and how it's going to work, they were really more relying on this idea that this was going to be a success.
Yes.
That it had been a success before, it would be a success again.
That it had been done. And that Thor believes it had been done, that we can do it again.
Yes.
Yeah, they were going off of Thor's faith.
Right.
Of what he had heard, the vision he had seen.
Right.
And they're we trust you.
Right. He had been given essentially the heavenly vision from the elder that he spoke with. And that, so, so he knew the specifications of
the boat.
And they had very specific materials with which to build the boat.
Yes.
They weren't using any modern materials. They were only using what
was available to them at the time when they would have done it.
Yes.
Thor actually said that too. Yes. We will only use what was available to them at the time. We will build it to their specifications.
Yes.
This heavenly pattern.
Yeah. This heavenly pattern.
This pattern that's already been made.
Yep. And except they did have a radio.
They did.
On there, and they had a camera on there. They had a few modern.
They had the camera specifically
to record
for the documentary.
For the documentary to prove that they actually.
Yes, because with the radio, it wasn't because it was actually to call for help. It was actually to check in with people, letting them know where they were at, that they were actually doing it.
Yeah, follow on the journey.
Because their funding their continued funding was dependent upon that as well. Yeah. So they needed to check in. So it wasn't like they had the radio to save themselves.
Yeah.
It wasn't for that goal or purpose.
Yeah.
Right. All the modern technologies they had weren't
to help them on the journey.
Yes, they weren't to enhance their journey to get there. It was just they're incidentals, basically.
It would have been pointless to go on an expedition to prove something with no proof other than just your word when you actually have
we made it.
cameras.
Woo.
Yeah,
exactly.
That's kind of like the testimonies we have in the scriptures of Jesus raised from the dead. There were eyewitnesses.
Yes.
Yes.
I liked how Bridget was saying, each of the 6 members, they had different functions and things, but you can picture 6 men on a raft. They're going to be bumping into each other, rubbing each
other. It's a small raft.
And so they definitely represent the idea of the church life.
Yes.
And how they had to cooperate and communicate, and they had to work together.
Couldn't hide.
We saw that big time. I mean, basically, it was life in the midst of death.
Yeah.
It was this raft literally in the middle of the ocean.
World system.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. So it was this life in the midst of and passing through essentially death unto new life. So that's
on this wood, on this tree.
Yes.
That had been cut down and shaped.
Yeah. Yes.
I mean, so the raft itself can represent Christ too.
Yes.
He is the raft. Yes. He is the life upon which they have thrown themselves and are utterly dependent.
Yes.
He is the foundation upon that death.
He's the life getting them through the death.
Yes.
Yes.
And so basically they are to get on this raft after they've built it, and they float. They got to float through these currents, and they have to catch a certain current.
Yes.
Because the belief is that they hit this certain current, that current will take them to the Polynesian islands.
Yes.
Right.
Like they had a map so they could kind of see if they were going in the right direction or wrong direction. There's no motor on this raft.
No.
It was more just as they're checking the stars and looking in, they could see, okay, are we close to the current? Are we way off?
Yes.
It was quite interesting because there was really nothing they could do if they were off. They were just going to know.
Exactly.
Hey, we're off. We're still off.
It wasn't like they could fix it.
Right. Yeah. So in the beginning, it's really awesome. It's awesome in a hilarious way, just having lived in body life, because they're having this big send off, right?
Yeah.
And they're all in their suits. They're literally on a wooden raft
In the ocean.
floating out into the ocean, but they're in their best clothing.
Their Sunday best.
Church clothes.
Yeah, church clothes.
And
I mean, even when we were watching, going, why are they all dressed up?
right?
They were in their fig leaves.
They were. So, how true is that to form in body life in the beginning? We all still have our presentable selves on.
Yes.
Right? And then you come into contact with the real person.
Yeah.
And so you see them like in just their skivvies, right? And
Not
nothing
really.
else.
Yeah.
Carrie was like, aren't they going to shave? I'm like, the last thing they're worried about is
Shaving.
shaving.
Yeah.
No, when they brought stuff to shave.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep. But
Yeah. It gets real, essentially.
Yeah.
It eventually gets real.
Yeah, because you
And
can
the
only
fancy
wear
clothes
those
get
nice
shed.
clothes for so long out on
Yes,
that raft.
yes.
It
The
gets to
same
the
with
point-
body life.
Yeah.
It gets to the point where you hope they put some skivvies on at least.
yeah.
That's how raw and natural you can get.
Yeah.
I mean, 6 guys floating in the ocean. I mean, you are surrendered to the ocean and the wind, as he said.
Yeah.
I mean, if a whale comes along and capsizes you, you're surrendered to that. If a big wave, a storm, a hurricane hits you, you're surrendered to that. There's nothing
You can do about it.
Yeah.
That's how out of your control it is.
Yes.
That's how out of our control the church is. Jesus is. He is that out of our control.
Yeah.
Yet we think that we can build stuff and do something to control it
Yes.
when we are surrendered to Him utterly.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, talking about body life and different people on the raft, certainly something that happens on occasion is that we have some difference of opinions.
That happens?
What?
It does happen. And I think it's important to point out that it does happen, and it's going to happen.
Yeah.
Don't
be afraid of
avoid
them.
Don't be surprised.
Don't be surprised.
Mm-hmm.
Don't just run into your corner of the raft.
Right.
And pout.
Because everybody can see you.
What's Tyrone doing over there? Well, he's just pouting.
I mean, honestly, though, I was just thinking about that when RC was just now reminding us of being surrendered to the wind and the ocean. The reality is we're surrendered together.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because there's
That's the
no
church.
place to go.
Yes.
I think of when so many of the disciples, not the 12, but so many of the other disciples had left because Jesus had said this really hard thing, and he says to the 12, "Are you going to go too?"
Yeah.
And they're like, "But
Where
would we go?"
You're the
You
raft.
have the words of life.
Right,
Yeah.
And when we're starting to see that more and more, we realize the truth is there's nowhere else to go because it's literally all death
Yeah.
outside.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean,
You get
where would
outside
one
of
of them
Christ.
go?
Yeah.
That's wonderful. Yeah.
Literally, there's no place to go.
They
It's not like
are
there's sea
attached to
turtles
the-
around
yeah.
that you can just, use your hair of your back to tie ropes. And, it's a different movie. That's a different movie.
So we're saying this because these two gentlemen get into it. What was it over? One was wanting to smoke or something?
One kept blowing his cigarette smoke into the face of the other one as they were working the radio.
Yes.
Well,
he was smoking a cigarette on a raft.
Yeah.
And a balsa wood.
Yes. I know, wood and smoking and fire.
It was one of those intense times the radio had stopped working.
Right.
Yeah.
They were already a little frustrated.
It's sparking.
Things were just not going according to what they wanted them to be.
And they hadn't reached the current yet.
It wasn't what they thought it was going to to happen.
Right.
Yeah, it wasn't going as smoothly as they had expected. They didn't feel like they were quite on course for the current, and so
if they miss it, we're going to go down
high.
here. We're going to not be able to do this. I'll start all over.
And
then those things that already kind of probably annoyed you a little bit before are just magnified.
Yes.
This is the experience in body life where you realize, there's an aspect where it just feels like nothing's going right. No, that thing over there is annoying me. I'm probably annoying somebody else. And all of these things compounding to the point where there's this tension that's building between these two brothers. I'll say it like this, or compadres, whatever you want to say. And they ultimately look at each other and they lay it down.
They do.
But what's interesting is that Thor's watching the whole thing. It's like Jesus sitting there just watching.
Yeah.
Okay. Because you don't know if they're going to go to blows or not.
Like they could punch each other.
Oh, yeah.
Like they were going to.
I mean, because these were two already military men.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
And there's only 3 of them in this scene. And so, our understanding is there's only 3 of them inside at this time.
Yeah.
The 2 of them sitting they're sitting right next to each other. They're touching each other. That's how close they're sitting to each other, all right? Working on the radio, and it's not working, and the one guy's smoking, and he just blows the smoke in the other guy's face, and he says something to stop. And he blows it again. Yeah. And so they just sit there and stare at each other. And you could feel the tension on screen.
Yeah.
And Thor's on the other side of the room doing something, but he looks up.
He stops
and he stops what he's doing, and he's watching them. He's not trying to stop them.
Nope.
He's not trying to say, hey, settle down. You apologize, and you do this, and put up these walls and rules and follow these so this doesn't happen. He's waiting to see what life is met here.
Yes.
Basically. And it's a good few seconds that they just stare at each other, and everybody's going, are they going to blow, or are they going to fight? What's going on? And then they both just back down.
They do.
The guy with the cigarette tosses it out, puts it out, and they just back down and go on like nothing had happened.
Yeah, it's as if they remember why they're there on the boat, on the raft.
Yep.
The vision.
Yep.
Thor didn't have to break in and stop them and say, do this, don't do that. It was just a moment, and it was quite a moment. We were all like, "Holy cow!" That was totally the cross.
Yes, it was surrendering to the cross.
Yes.
That was the picture of them doing that.
Yes, both of them doing it, and what was gained out of it. A was neither one of them being lost to the ocean or the raft being torn apart by 2 guys going at it.
Right,
and possibly others being
brought into it
because of it.
They could have gone to blows and hit the radio and really broke it and done some other things to, like you said, tear the raft apart. They could have lost a lot of stuff. And a couple of things, too, to go along with that is one of the guys in that tension, I think he's the one who brought it. Somebody brought a parrot. There's a parrot on board.
Yes.
The parrot was on the trip.
Yes. Yeah, there was a parrot. Sorry, 6 guys and a parrot.
His name was Lorita.
Lorita the parrot.
Well, what happened is in the beginning, Lorita comes and someone feeds her.
Okay.
I think that's, maybe I'm making this up. I thought I remember someone fed her and so she stuck around.
I
Maybe
don't
she
know.
was someone's pet. I don't know. Anyway.
According to a highly scholarly source of Wikipedia,
okay.
Just says the expedition also carried a pet parrot named Lorita.
Okay.
Lorita.
She was a pet.
So I
There
don't
you go.
know.
There you go.
But that could have happened.
It could have.
I might be
Became a
thinking
pet.
of the crab. Didn't they feed a crab?
Yeah, there was a
Had a crab.
crab that came along and was on the ride, too.
That's might be what
His name was Jorge.
Crabby.
You are making stuff up now. Okay,
But anyway,
yes.
They so Lorita though parrot, the one guy is really kind of taken to Lorita and actually feeds Lorita and takes care of Lorita, and so there's some of that because Lorita has caused a little trouble too.
Yes.
By chewing on some of the radio wires and doing some other things, and so there's some backstory behind this tension too. It's not just this one moment, because the one guy wants to do the radio, and the parrot has hindered that a little bit. And this one guy really likes the parrot, and now he's telling him to stop doing what he's doing. And there's just a compound after compound. And this is also after the engineer has showed one of these guys, hey, there's something wrong with the raft.
Well, you see him pull some stuff up out of the water, like handful of something, and you're actually wondering, I wonder what that is. Is it seaweed? What is it?
Right.
And so he's kind of starting to look to see, oh goodness. And in his mind, he sees that this is the raft. The bottom part of the raft is falling apart.
Right.
And he sees it again, and he shows it. He's like,
yeah. So he shows the guy, look,
basically
stuff going on.
Right, the part of the raft that's in the water is disintegrating.
Yeah, it's disintegrating.
But he hasn't said anything really to anybody.
No, he hasn't.
He's holding it all in.
Yep.
Christ is falling apart. I must do something.
Yes,
that's what he's thinking.
And the thing is that he's fixated on it.
Yes.
Because all throughout you're seeing him look at that.
He's sitting there looking at the boat deteriorating.
Yeah.
The engineer, the one who thinks he can do something about it, is the one who is focused on it and sees it falling apart.
The one who offered his own resources.
Right, and the one who said, hey, build it this way and we can do it. So there's that going on.
Right.
You got the one guy in Body Life who always focuses on problems. Sees that everybody else is
the church is going down.
Yeah.
It's just...
I hope we're going to last.
We're not going to last.
And then you got the one guy who has the pet parrot who breaks everything.
Yep.
It's annoying.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. And then you got one guy, I don't know, you got all these different guys, right?
Yeah.
6 of them total.
So we have a few experiences, and I think we're probably going to get these out of order, but we'll just talk to them as they come to us. So we've just talked about the parrot, and they are now being circled by sharks. They knew this was going to happen. They even brought shark repellent. That you sprinkle in the water that's supposed to repel the sharks. I don't know if it actually works or not. They ended up eating it on accident.
It's a funny moment in
It is a very funny moment.
Powdered soup. But
Anyway, and eventually one of the sharks literally jumps up out of the water and eats the parrot.
Does.
What?
Yes.
And the guy who loves the parrot is instantly livid, obviously. And you start to see him...
Well, now, hang on.
What?
Because there's a build-up to this.
Okay.
Because Thor, in his wanting to document this, they've put the one guy who can't swim, we've already established that, into their little dinghy, their little life raft dinghy thing. And they've got him out to sea, at a tow, right?
Yeah.
Rope, so he can film the raft out on the ocean. Yeah. So he can actually show, look, here we are.
Full-blown picture.
Out on the ocean. Yes. The one guy who can't swim. And that's where they see these sharks coming. So now there's already some excitement and tension because they're having to pull in their leader guy on this dinghy out in the middle of death with more death circling him. So there's that heightened tension. And so they're pulling him in and they finally get him in before sharks come around. And then that's when Lorita...
Poor Lorita.
Gets this shark jumps up, so they're already hyped up. All this is already falling apart. Yeah.
About them getting him in, they eventually have to jump in to get him. Isn't that the one where they have to jump in? It's a different part?
See, this is where we have all our different...
No, because, and I remember this specifically because I was stressed out. I don't like movies with a lot of tension. And I was super stressed out. I was expecting that was going to be the outcome. And I was actually really relieved when they got him back on the raft so easily.
Yes, right, yeah.
That's right.
Because there's one guy who did fall over.
But we'll get to that.
Yeah.
Or is that later?
I promise.
It's the engineer, isn't it?
It is, yes. So the parrot gets eaten, okay?
Yes.
And the guy who loves the parrot, who just a little bit before almost went to blows with the other guy, is livid now. And you start to see him walking around the raft following this shark.
Yeah, well, we don't know he's following the shark because all the camera shows is him. He's like looking at the sea.
You really don't know what he's doing.
And the camera follows him as he walks around the raft. And you're just following like, what is he doing? He's looking at something. He's watching something.
You notice that the guy who he almost went to blows with is now walking too. And they're they're not necessarily side by side, but you can tell they both are thinking the exact same thing.
Not speaking to each other.
Not speaking to each other, right?
They're after the same thing.
Right. And so...
one accord,
So, so the friend, not the one who loves Polly, but the friend...
Polly.
Parrot Polly. Sorry. Whatever her name was.
Lolita.
He literally grabs onto a rope, is standing on the edge of the raft, and he bends down into the water. And y'all, he grabs the tail of that shark.
He hooks it with his arm.
He sure does.
He brings it with his arm.
While the one who loves the parrot has grabbed this huge hook, he's a little bit in front of it, and then literally as he grabs the tail of the shark, he hooks that shark in the side, and they hoist that shark up onto the raft.
It's a big shark.
It's huge.
It's a live shark.
And then
and he's a mad shark.
He's a mad shark. And then they start stabbing the shark.
They just go
over
at him.
and over and over, and they cut his side so that all his entrails fall out. And they're after they are getting that parrot back.
Yes.
But what was really beautiful outside of the
grossness,
and ridiculousness of attacking a shark,
the awesomeness.
The awesome. Yeah, you're right. No, it is. It really is awesome. Is that you see what has been built in these brothers through the cross, through denying self amongst body life, that they are now literally moving as one and overcoming the enemy
together.
Yes.
And this is
with
this
no
where
fear. Not like in figuring out a plan first. Like literally, the spirit within them is guiding them both in oneness, and they're overcoming this enemy. Yes. However,
but even at that, he went to save that shark because the parrot, the thing that annoyed him in the first place, he's actually going to save this thing now. So he lays down himself for the benefit of his brother
because he knows his brother.
Because he knows it's important to his brother.
Yep.
You know, and so he's like, I'm with you.
Yeah, the one who was annoyed by the parrot
is
now actually helping save the parrot.
He would have been glad.
Yes.
You would have. Oh,
good.
I mean, that's what you kind of expected was, oh, well, he's gone now. Shucks.
Yeah. You did. You didn't expect those two to come around and hoist that thing.
Just staring at the screen, you're going, dude, what is going on now? And they just follow it around. It was well done. That part was well done. Well filmed.
It was
and
amazing.
Stuff. And it was in this, wasn't it in this kerfuffle going on that the engineer gets knocked off?
No. Okay,
Nope.
so
not yet.
So the engineer is getting sprayed with the blood of this shark as they're stabbing it. And here's the issue: this isn't the only shark floating around the raft. Now they're making such a mess with this shark that the blood in the water is actually riling up the other sharks. Right. So now all of a sudden they have to push the shark off the raft to give the other sharks something to eat because like the blood has, the blood in the water is whatever. And so literally the engineer is just covered in this shark's blood, like just covered because of where he happened to be standing was right in the spray, right?
When they opened it up.
Yeah. And so they push the shark off and like it kind of dies down because the other sharks start going after that meat. And the engineer's just done.
That was the last. He was done.
Doesn't he
was
check
done.
it? Doesn't he check it again after that, or somebody sees?
He immediately goes, and so they had already seen that the raft was starting to come apart, or disintegrate essentially. So he goes into his own stuff inside the covered part of the raft,
secret stash.
Seriously, and he brings out this roll of steel cables.
Yeah, steel cables.
And he literally comes up to Thor, gets on his knees, and begs Thor, please, can we bind the raft with these cables? Please. I just want to get home. I want to stay alive. Can we please do this? He is basically wanting to use man-made resources.
His own effort.
To save them because he's now fearful.
To appease himself, to appease himself.
Yes.
To
ease the fear in himself.
Yes.
And oh my gosh, you can see it coming from a mile away.
You can.
Not angry. Thor does not get angry. He doesn't yell at him and you're so pitiful and I can't believe I brought you. He does
it with a smile.
He takes the cables as though he might be willing to use them, and then he just chucks those things out to sea.
He sure does.
It's like, and this is what I do with man's resources.
Yes.
No.
So
it's in that. So the rejection of not having his security. The engineer then gets up, and in his, stupor of not getting his way of Thor / Christ saying, no, you cannot bring your own resources. This does not.
It's not going to work.
He starts walking along the edge.
Because he thinks his salvation is now lost.
Yeah.
Yes.
The only way we can succeed and be saved in this is if we have used my stuff.
My idea was not accepted, so there's no point in being around.
And he's walking along the edge of the raft. He's going back. He's like done being out here with everyone. He's going back into the cover part, but yet he walks along the very edge. And you're all like, "Are you serious?" But that's what we do in our frustration in our flesh, you know. And he slips and falls in.
He sure does.
And he's covered in blood. And there's a lot of sharks in the water.
Still.
Yes.
Before that happens, after Thor throws the cable into the sea, he says something to him. He says, just trust, have faith. The raft will hold. He says, trust, the raft will hold. And then he walks in the ocean.
Well, somewhere in there he says, to have faith. And he says, this isn't religion, Thor.
Right.
Yeah.
And Thor's like,
I know.
I never said it was religion.
Yeah. I never said it was.
We actually saw a lot of the Lord in that. Because religion does require those steel cables.
It does.
That's the external.
That is religion.
And Thor was depending upon something else.
Yes.
So he falls in. Covered in blood.
And they have to save him.
Yes.
They try throwing him the little round lifesaver thing. And he can't get it. And one of the other brothers literally has to jump
into death.
And
into
save
the ocean
him.
and save him.
Yep. And the truth is, y'all going to have to talk about that because I covered my eyes.
Right, because these sharks are there. And the one, okay, so, but building up to that too, this engineer has kind of made remarks throughout about, stuff not working or something, to where he has personally kind of annoyed the guy with Lolita. So the guy with Lolita already kind of has not necessarily a beef, but there is a small annoyance there, and you can see it, you can tell. Why is this engineer along? He's not, whatever. And he's the one who jumps in the water after the engineer.
Yeah.
So he's the one who nearly went to blows with this other guy, and that other guy is the one who helped him get the shark up. And now he's already had this thing against the Herman, the engineer, and he's the one that jumps in after. That's the beauty of body life. Where when we know that we are built with one another, we will lay down our own lives
for each other.
By the way, they still had the shark on the boat at that point because that's when they threw more shark meat off to repel some of them.
Oh, that's right, to deter.
Yeah.
There we go.
So while the one jumped in to save him, the others did their part also.
Yes, they did.
For their brother.
To kind of distract from... They're like, here, sharks, eat this stuff, while they're over here on the backside saying, come on, get them in.
Well, you can definitely see the spiritual warfare.
Yes.
Yeah.
You have the brother who's in death, another brother actually walking with him, and then the body, fighting on their behalf.
Yeah.
That's good.
That's really good. Oh, yeah, we've been in a lot of that.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my gosh.
But that is it, because the man in the water, he can't save himself.
No, he cannot.
He can't swim against that tide to get back to the raft by himself.
Yes.
And so he needs the help of the church, brothers and sisters.
Yeah.
And it takes the body as a whole doing their part to do it. Yeah. You're right. That's so good.
Yeah.
Oh,
so there were some times when there was storms.
Yeah.
There was some whales.
Yeah.
That came, and one of the things that stood out to me, particularly through those sort of experiences, was how they would tie themselves to the raft.
Yes.
There's another time we're going to talk about it again too, but they would essentially anchor themselves to the raft.
Yes.
And saw that as a picture of anchoring ourselves to Christ.
Yeah.
Yes.
When these kind of trials and tribulations
holding
come along.
fast to the head.
Holding fast to the head.
You're tied to that head.
Yes.
You got to. You'll just go out to sea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Be lost in death.
Looking at our stuff here, the engineer who offered up his own way of saving themselves, and Thor tosses it to the water. Again, picture of body life. We are learning to live by the Lord's life.
Yes.
It's not that we have learned and we know it and we know what we're doing now. But as a body, we are learning to move and express and give life to the Lord, to express that life that He has. And just like a baby in learning to walk falls down.
Yes.
And we don't get onto the baby for falling down or spitting food out
natural.
or whatever. And so we learn this and we make mistakes.
Yeah.
And we learn from those, and we say, okay, that's not it. And we pick it, and we learn. Yeah, Peter, he's out walking on the water. And then he looks away and starts to sink. Lord, save me. And there's Jesus right there reaching out immediately.
And Jesus doesn't, he says, see, Peter, you should have kept your eyes on me. That's what you get. And then he doesn't proceed to go into this long lecture about what you should have did and what you shouldn't have done. Peter turned back to the Lord, and the Lord said, yes. And he's there, and they walk back to the boat in the storm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
On water.
I mean, in that scene, I guess throughout the movie, you can tell on the raft maybe Herman is carrying a weight around.
Yes, you can see that.
That weight actually is relying on himself.
Yep.
But then after, quite an experience.
A near-death experience.
He had to go into death.
First, he was shed of what he had brought.
Yep.
The steel wire. And
Wasn't
then
it
he
him?
was in death. And then afterwards, there was like a lightness to
Yes.
it. Like more of a celebration.
Yeah.
And more of a unity with what was going on.
He
Exactly.
He no longer had that hindrance to essentially full surrender.
Yeah.
Now all of those things were gone, and so his option was surrender. Just surrender to being in this. And you definitely saw a lighter, not only a lightness to him, but a oneness with the other
That's what I was going to say too.
guys that hadn't
been there
fully
before.
there before. Yep.
Yes.
I agree.
Oftentimes in our experience in body life, the Lord puts the church in a situation where there is no other options but to surrender.
Yep.
And from that, we get to experience the Lord's freedom.
Yes.
Or as an individual member, it's one of those situations where it's just like, yeah, there's no other option but for me to surrender. Because all the stuff I've tried doesn't work. It's not going to work.
Yep. Yep.
Yes, Lord Jesus.
I was going to say about the whale part. Wasn't that Herman too? That was with his weight and fear. He's the one that killed the whale or stabbed the whale too.
Yes, he did.
Yeah, he's just worried. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Thank God.
Yeah, so like they couldn't bring a ton of food on this raft. It's a small raft. There's 6 people in it, and so they were going to have to fish.
Yeah.
They were going to have to eat out of what was available to them there, and so they had a spear. And he not only did he act out of fear and try to throw a spear into a whale, but when he did, it got stuck in the whale and it was still attached to the boat and it almost flipped the boat over.
Yes.
It did.
Yeah.
And that's where I think the guy started getting annoyed with him.
Yeah, and they had to cut the rope and they
had
lost
to cut
the spear.
they lost the spear because they had to cut the rope to save the raft.
Right.
Or just being pulled off course.
Yes.
To a point where they couldn't return from, essentially couldn't, catch the current.
Right. Exactly. So I guess I just want to reiterate, even in body life, we're all being transformed.
Yes.
And we don't know the circumstances I don't know the circumstances that Bridget needs to be transformed. But I need to be surrendered to what the Lord allows for her to be transformed and walk with Him in it. I can't say, well, I don't want that particular thing. So what I'm saying is, he Herman has this fear, and fear is dictating him right now. And we walk with saints that are dictated by fear, and they will capsize things.
We can attach to that thing we're afraid of, and it can drag the church along.
It sure can. And so we could say, we'll just cut the rope and you go off your own way. No, the Lord has not allowed that. We are on one raft. One raft, one circumstance, and our only circumstance is Jesus Christ. And so we are in this together. So, him, sure they were disappointed that they lost their thing, but then again, you see him going out to save him.
Yes. Yep.
You see what I'm saying? And so we have to be okay to a certain extent of what the Lord allows in our brothers and sisters' lives to transform them. Because it's going to come around, because we're going to be transformed too. And they're going to need to be around to save us. Because we're all in it together. And so just, it's a together thing.
Right.
It is so a together thing. Because of the examples we've given, there's none of them that are one person by themselves.
Nope.
It might be one person getting in trouble, but it takes the church, the body, to bail them out.
Yep.
Yes.
I mean, the 2 grabbing the shark, that wasn't one guy after the shark. There was 2 of them doing it. And then one guy falling over, and then the one guy jumping in, but then there was the rest of the body doing their part to get the sharks off their trail so that they could pull them in. I mean, there's just scene after scene in this movie of that teamwork, that body work, if you will.
So There's a scene, and I thought this is a small scene, but I thought it was really interesting. So they have this little cage to drop down in the water with one of the guys in it, and he's basically checking for sharks when he gets down in the water to do this.
It's like a primitive shark cage.
Yes.
But I thought he was checking underneath.
All right.
Okay. Yeah. So that might, he was checking the bottom of the raft, right? So when he gets down in the water, there's literally a shark
right there,
like just kind of hanging out underneath the raft,
he doesn't see,
underneath. And it made me think of when, kind of the enemy's hidden and lurking, and then the church sees, or someone in the church sees, they didn't immediately go into panic mode.
No.
Of course, they got him out of the water as fast as they could. He was like,
he might have been panicking a
little. But the reality is that is always kind of there. That possibility. Yeah. Yes, is always kind of there.
Oh, yeah.
There's always sharks lurking.
Yes.
Oh,
yeah.
But they're on life,
Wow.
So, yeah.
So they're at sea for 101 days total.
Right.
But, so many days into it, they're still not on the course that they are supposed to be on. So that's adding to their stress a little bit.
Yeah.
We're still not on the path we think we're supposed to be on.
Going too far.
But they're on. Yeah, they're afraid of going too far off course. But what happened?
You say they, but the reality is that Thor's not.
Thor was never.
Every time they keep bringing this up to Thor, he's like, it's okay.
No, I trust it.
Yeah,
we'll get there.
They did this.
Yep.
I know that we can too.
We can get there from here.
Yeah, it's gonna. This worked for them. It's gonna work for us.
And so they thought they were supposed to hit this current that takes them to the islands. They actually hit it farther north, and a little bit further north than what they thought they were supposed to hit. So everybody else, you're right, besides Thor, was kind of in panic mode. Like, oh my gosh, where's he taking us? Right. But they hit the current, and there's a celebration when they know they hit the current.
Yeah, I saw that as after a season of learning to live by the Lord's life together, and there's the rubbing together, and then we come to a place of what we would call glory, or moving in the Spirit.
Yeah.
They're in the flow or the motion of the ocean.
Yeah. He just cracked himself up.
He did. He's in the motion of the ocean.
I just thought about that now, and I was like, I shouldn't have said that. I'm done.
Well, yeah, so they were in the flow of Christ's life.
Yes.
They realized, but they were all cognizant of it.
Yes.
They were all aware, we're in the life.
So they knew now that they were going to hit where they were supposed to go.
Yes.
Yep.
Even though they were in the current,
they
still only went, how many,
the average of the trip was 1.7 miles per hour.
Yes.
Could you imagine 101 days moving only 1.7 miles per hour?
Yeah.
That's why it was 100 days.
That's a long time.
And we've talked about how
that's slow.
How often body life feels like that.
Yes.
How often it feels like we are not making any headway. Lord, what in the world? Right. It's just, but at the same time, how much faster things happen when the Lord's life is free to move as He wants it to. Yes. How much faster transformation happens.
Yes.
How much faster the building happens. I think of, when you're even now, but particularly I remember being back in school and the days were so long, or someone's even said this about parenting, your days are long, but the years are so short.
Yes.
Yeah, and you saw that in them. So finally, they are close. They can see land.
Well, first they see a bird.
Yes.
Yes.
Which, to me, was reminiscent of sending that dove out from the ark. Somebody mentioned the ark earlier.
Because birds, stay close enough to land to fly out and get back. And, so then they see land, and they are thrilled. However, there's still one more hurdle to overcome.
It's probably one of the biggest ones.
It is
razor sharp.
It's the biggest one.
It's a reef.
Razor sharp reef. Yes.
So we saw several things with this. We saw
ships get stuck on this reef.
Yes.
Yeah, you can even see a couple of overturned ships.
You could fall out, and get
and just
land into the razor sharp parts. But what we saw, especially with the boat, the wisdom in using the balsa wood and the fact that it was very pliable or falling apart or disintegrating is actually one of the things that helped them get over the reef.
Yes.
And it wasn't until afterwards that the engineer realized that.
Right.
Yeah.
So the very thing he thought was going to be the thing that destroyed everything was the thing that actually is going to save them.
It was for their benefit. Yeah.
Right.
It was for their benefit. And so that if that doesn't sound like the Lord to you.
Oh, I know.
That's it.
The thing that we think is going to take it down was like, no,
work
that's
together for the good
Of those.
Yep.
Who are called according to his purpose.
Yep.
Please, yes, make sure we put that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Come on.
So basically, the first thing they do when Thor kind of tells them all, well, yeah, there's land, but we got to get over this reef to get to it, is they lighten the load.
They do.
They
that is
throw
another thing.
everything overboard that they can possibly do without.
Yes.
To make the boat as light as possible. And then, who of all people, but Herman,
Yes.
the engineer, he's the one who actually has the idea for getting over the reef, right?
He does. Counting the waves.
So, like every 13th wave is supposed to be a bigger wave.
Yes, it builds up.
Yeah. So they lighten the load and then literally strap themselves to the boat.
They have to lose their baggage.
Yes.
All of their religious baggage, all their stuff they brought.
Yes.
Before they can enter into the promised land.
They already came with a light load because, I mean, they're just on a small raft.
But then
now the Lord's
more,
like, no,
which is with
now
the
we're
Lord
taking,
too.
Yes.
You think you've gotten rid of some, but there's still more.
Yeah. And then you're
Don't
like,
they
hey.
use some of their baggage to anchor? Well,
Yes.
don't they use some of it to
Yes.
anchor the boat so they're in a
First.
place of pause, or
Yep.
stopping, waiting?
But they can see
Yeah.
the island, but they have to wait.
Yes.
Wait.
They have to wait for the right wave.
Yeah,
Wait
Right?
for the Lord's timing.
Right, so to say the Lord's
yeah,
timing.
Lord's timing.
So finally they're counting the waves after they've gotten rid of stuff. They anchored themselves down. They've tied themselves to the boat, particularly Thor because he can't swim.
Right.
And so they're counting the waves and they're going to cut the anchor
Yes.
for the 13th wave.
Yeah.
And they do, and what happens is they don't quite make it over and they land on the reef.
They do.
But because the underside of the
Yep.
raft was so soft from taking on so much water, as the water pulled back out to sea, they
were
pulled
dragged
with
back
it.
out, yeah.
The bottom of that boat
Didn't
just
get
shredded
stuck.
right on the reef. Exactly. And so they were pulled back out, and the next wave
Send them.
actually gets them over.
Yes.
Yep. So it anyway, it was awesome,
It was.
and
We saw a lot of body life and we saw heavenly vision.
yes,
Thor was.
When they get to the island, I mean, in the movie, it shows like a celebration.
Yes.
Like dancing,
Yeah.
feasting,
Yeah.
a vision of heaven.
yes,
Yes.
yes, and amen.
Yes.
So anyway, good movie.
Awesome movie.
We
Lots of the
enjoyed
Lord
it.
in it.
Yes. Thanks, Brother David.
Yeah.
Thank you, Brother David.
And so if you have a movie you'd like to challenge us to see Christ in, where can they go, Andrew?
They need to go to tothesaints.com and let us know.
Yes. We can't guarantee you we'll see Christ in every movie,
Yes.
Yeah, don't send us
but we'll sure
Death
try.
Canoe 4 or something like that.
I don't know.
Anyway, so that's Kon-Tiki. Kontiki. 2013. It's well done. Very
Yes.
well done. Great music, great everything. It's well done.
Yeah, I think you'll enjoy it. So hey, don't forget about the conference, guys.
Just tell them about that real quick.
Yep. July 20th through the 23rd here in Austin, Texas at the Wyndham Garden. We have a
guest.
special, yes,
Early bird special.
we do have an
yeah.
early bird special until the end of April. And we have our special guests are Milt Rodriguez and John Zins.
Yep.
And it's going to be a very interactive conference.
Yeah, connecting and equipping.
Yes. And we would really love to see you there.
We're excited to see you
Yep.
all come.
You can go to tothesaints.com where there's more information where you can register, where you can book the hotel. We do have a special rate with the hotel.
Yep.
You have a special room rate, and you get 2 free breakfasts every morning at their restaurant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Hope to see you there.
ToTheSaints.com. Love to see you there. All right. Until next time, this is RC.
This is Tyrone.
This is Andrew.
This is Carrie.
And this is Bridget.
And Allison.
Allison.
This is Allison.
Been listening to the Saints. Love you guys.